All right. So this lecture, as I have indicated, is about the ontology of information, and we are going to build on the brief introduction we provided. Now, to start this discussion, I want you to read what you see on your screen. I will also try to read it out. It says, imagine a world where everything you see, hear, or touch is information. A world where information is not just something you use, but something you are. A world where information and reality are one and the same. Now, I will ask you a number of questions based on this. This particular paragraph basically says that information is everything. Even you yourself, you are what? You are information. I want to ask you, is this kind of world possible? Do you think this kind of world is possible? Do you think this kind of world is possible, Borisa?
Yes.
You think this kind of world is possible where everything you see, hear, or touch is information? Can you explain that further with an example?
I think I'll peg it on the recent digital world or modern world, how fast-growing technology and everything is going. I think it's yeah, it has to do with information.
Everything we see or hear is information. Muda, what's your view? Is this kind of world possible?
I think it's not possible.
Yeah, Muda says he thinks it's not possible. Why?
Everything be information.
Okay. Hadi, do you think a world like that is possible?
I think I agree with Muda. It's not.
It's not possible. Why?
Just like Muda explained, honestly, I see it from that point too.
Okay. Shaibu.
Yes, bro.
Is it possible? Can we have a world where everything is information and you yourself, you are even information?
Well, Prof, I also think that it's not possible.
It's not possible.
Especially, yeah.
Okay.
Looking at the environment, everybody and how he sees it. If you look at the LGBTQ, if you look at that one, for example, someone will see a male as a male, and then others will see the male as a female in their environment or their society.
Yeah, so you see,
so
I think there's some kind of a divergence here. There's a divide. Borisa thinks that that world is possible, where everything is information. Even you yourself, you are information. What you see, what you hear. A world where information and reality are one and the same. I agree with her, and I'll explain why. I'll explain why briefly as we proceed. Now, you need to first of all understand what we mean by information and what your view of information is. So, for instance, if we say that imagine a world where everything you see. Now just look around you. When I look around myself, I see a computer, I see books, and I see pens. All of this, depending on my understanding of what information is, all of them are information. Even me, I'm an information. And I'll give an example. Those in the quantitative disciplines will tell you that we are all just statistics. I don't know if you have come across this phrase. We are all just statistics. Basically, what they are telling you is that we are all just what? Pieces of information. It depends on how you see it. So look around you. Just look around you. You see sofas, chairs, clocks, bulbs, fans, markers, chairs, and whatnot. If you understand what information is and based on what your perspective of information is, all of that is information. Now, let's think about what I see. We were just talking about what we see, what we hear. If I make a call, I'm hearing some signals from somebody meaning A, B, C. It is information. So what we see, what we hear, even the things I touch, right now I've just touched a mug. The mug can be described as a piece of what? Of information. But that depends largely on how I perceive information. Now that is the first question I just asked. Is this world possible? The second question is this world desirable? And the last one is this world real? Putting all of these questions together, I think the last question sort of sums it up in terms of the reality of what? The kind of world where everything is what? Is information. And if you look at the examples I am giving, if I am going to be considered as information, in terms of numbers, I'm just part of a statistic. So I'm information. If you look at the components of a human being, of a person, there are several components that comes together to make a person. Pieces of what? Information. But we're saying that based on the way you perceive information, that will help you in understanding this paragraph and answering these questions in a very, very philosophical way. We'll come back to this, but I want us to proceed by revisiting our understanding of what ontology is. And as Hadi has clearly indicated, ontology basically is an aspect of philosophy that looks at objects and how all these objects would what? Relate with each other, okay, in some way. So basically, we're interested in, when we're talking about ontology, we're interested in what exists. That's basically what we're interested in. And how what exists relate to another. Basic, not so. Now, if we want to now build on our understanding of what ontology is, in terms of what information is. So I want us to proceed by looking at the ontology of what? Of information. And to do that, we will look at three critical components. First, we're going to be looking at the nature and existence of information. What is the nature of information? What is information? And how does it exist? We would also be interested in looking at information as a philosophical concept. Then the third aspect would be for us to look at the relationship between information and reality. So three things. First, we want to look at what? The nature and existence of information. Second, we'll look at the philosophical concept of information. And then three, we'll look at what? The relationship between information and what? And reality. Okay, it is important we do this because even the nature of our discipline, a lot of the things we are going to be discussing is what? About information. Honestly speaking, the name of our discipline is what? Information systems. That is why it is critical that we understand this component. Oh, okay. So the first part would be for us to look at the nature and existence of information. And now there are some critical questions we will ask ourselves under each of the three broad areas. The first set of questions we would ask ourselves would be, is information a real thing that exists independently of our minds? Or is it a construct that depends on our perception and interpretation? We'll come back to answer this question. Then, in terms of information as a philosophical concept, we will be asking questions that has to do with how information contributes to our knowledge, how information contributes to our understanding, and how information can help us to explain what? To explain reality. We are also interested in how information relates to other philosophical concepts, like what? Truth, logic, evidence, and causality. Then the third part will be for us to look at the relationship between what? Information and what? And reality. And here, the questions we will ask would be, how does information shape and reflect reality? How does reality constrain or enable information? And then lastly, how do information and reality co-evolve or co-create? How do they shape each other? So we'll come back to all these three sets of questions under the three. But what I want you to keep at the back of your mind is that we are looking at this in terms of three broad categories. First, nature and existence of information. Two, information as a philosophical concept. And three, the relationship between information and what? And reality. So I would want to go back to asking you guys questions. What is information? What is information?
All facts.
We can't hear you.
But you guys can hear me, oh?
Can you hear Muda?
They can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear Muda.
Okay.
Can hear you.
So I'm saying information is meaning that is made out of data or raw facts and figures.
Okay.
Making meaning out of.
So basically what you are saying, I mean, this is a basic concept. If you are teaching undergraduate, this is a very big, and I don't think any of you should have problems explaining what. So I was expecting that you would all be struggling to explain what information is. So if you are saying information is process data or process facts or whatever, basically what you are saying is that it is the result of processing, manipulating data, and organizing data into meaningful forms. That's what actually distinguishes data from what? From information. So information is all about processing data, manipulating it, organizing it into a meaningful form. Okay. Now we can classify, we are also aware that we can classify information in several different ways. I'm not going to go into that. So it can be factual, procedural, instructive, whatever. Then we also have emphasized already the fact that the philosophy of information systems is a branch of philosophy that studies information processing and drawing from other disciplines like computer science and technology and whatnot. Okay. Now, I want us to proceed to asking some critical questions. I want us to proceed to asking or delving into some critical questions. And the main issues we want to look at are the issues about the conceptual nature, the basic principles of information, its use, and the dynamics that surround it. So, for instance, there are some critical factors we always want to subject information to in terms of whether the information is accurate, it is reliable, and whatnot. Now, based on this basic understanding of what information is, it is now proper or easier for us to delve into the three main categories of this lecture, the three main aspects of this lecture: the nature and existence of information, the second being what? Information as a philosophical concept, the philosophical concept of information, and then the third one, the relationship between what? Information and what? And reality. Now, looking at the nature and existence of information, the question we would ask or we will be interested in answering would be to try and find out the ontological status of information. And when I say ontological status of information, we're basically looking at the reality status of information. And here we are interested in asking the questions about whether information is a real thing that exists independent of our mind, or we construct it depending on our perception and interpretation. Now, based on this nature and existence of information aspect, we're interested in two things, two critical things. And for you to be able to follow throughout the rest of the lecture, you need to grasp that. Understanding the ontological status of information means that you need to understand whether information is a real thing on one hand, and whether information is a construct based on what? Our perceptions. Two things. Whether information is a real thing or whether it is based on a construct. Now, several views have emerged in terms of the nature and existence of information. There are several views to it, and I want us to look at 3 views when it comes to the nature and existence of information. But based on our initial understanding that the ontological status of information can be gotten by asking 2 critical questions about whether information is a real thing, or whether that a real thing that exists, or information is just what? A construct of our, based on our perceptions and our interpretations. So the 3 main views when it comes to the nature and existence of information are the realism view. The realism view. And the realism view basically coincides or aligns with the fact that information exists. It's a real thing that exists. And those realists argue that information is an objective and an independent construct of the mind that reflects the structure and properties of reality. So for the realists, they think that information is a realistic phenomenon that exists. It doesn't care about how we think about it or how we perceive it. It is independent of what? Our mind. Then comes the second group of people who say that information is a construct, it's a subject. So the first people are basically saying that information is objective, it exists. Whilst the constructivists argue that information is a subjective and mind-dependent entity. So what you see as information depends on your what? Your perception and what? Your interpretation. Whilst in the first instance, in terms of the realism view, information exists independent and objective of our mind, perception, and interpretation. Then there's a third view. The third view is the pragmatist view. The pragmatists think that information is a pragmatic and action-oriented entity that is useful for solving problems and achieving goals. So anything at all that we can use, so they are not interested in whether it is objective, is subjective, but the pragmatists are interested in whether this entity called information is useful to help us in solving problems in organizations and society. Okay? Still on the nature and existence of information, let's look at the strengths and weaknesses of each view. So the realists think that it provides, the realism view thinks that that view provides a clear and consistent definition of information. And if you look at majority view of what information is, it is based on the realism view. But those who are a bit subjective usually would find themselves within the constructivist view, which acknowledges that there is diversity and there's complexity of information. So if you look at those 2 views, the way we see information would be completely different. Then there's a third view that says that it emphasizes the practical and functional value of information, but it faces the problem of circularity and vagueness of information. So look at the third one. The third one is not interested in whether information exists, whether it is realistic, whether it is objective, it is constructivist, or it's subjective. They are just interested in what? The value of the information. If that thing can help you in solving a particular problem, then that thing becomes what? Becomes a piece of information. So in understanding what information is, we need to know exactly how we are viewing where we stand in terms of these 3 views, whether we are having the realism view, the constructivist view, or a pragmatist view. And as I have indicated, the 2 main ways to be able to understand the nature and existence of information is to look at it in terms of ontology, ontological status, by looking at whether it is objective or it is subjective. And looking at it in terms of objectivity and subjectivity means that you are looking at it in terms of reality, in terms of independent of our mind. And then when it is subjective, you are looking at it in terms of whether it is dependent and subjective. Okay. Then the second part looks at the concept of information as a philosophical idea. As a philosophical idea. And here, our focus would be to see how information contributes to our knowledge and explanation of reality. How does information contribute to our knowledge of explanation? It helps in contributing to our knowledge and explanation of reality by providing us data and evidence. Remember that information comes from data. So we using information to contribute to our knowledge or understanding of a phenomenon would mean that the information is providing us evidence to support our beliefs and maybe probably hypotheses we may have made up. Then also it will help us in contributing to our knowledge and understanding by enabling communication and collaborating among each other. So without information, it will be difficult for us to communicate. Without information, it will be difficult for us to collaborate. Then without information, it will also be very difficult for us to reason. It will be difficult for us to reason. So information provides critical basis for us to be able to provide evidence of what we are doing. It will also help us in communicating and collaborating with each other. And also it will help us in supporting our reasoning process. So there are other philosophical concepts that we think information is related to. And these philosophical concepts are the issues of truth, logic, and evidence, as well as causality. In terms of truth, information is a representation of reality. So sometimes you want to tell somebody something, and you need to show the person evidence of what you are saying. In that case, information is related to what? Truth. We have also just indicated that information supports in our reasoning process. So it means that information is what? Related to what? Logic. We have also emphasized the fact that information helps in our understanding, it contributes to our knowledge and helps in our explanation of different phenomena and even our beliefs by providing us what? Evidence of what? Of data. So the concept of information is also related to what? Evidence. Also, the last one, information can help in explaining the issue of causality, because information can be a factor or mechanism that can influence or produce changes in reality. And I want to ask, how do you think information can produce changes in reality? Can anybody give an example? Or how information can act as a factor or can be a mechanism that can influence us? How does information act in terms of causality?
Bro, let me try. Yeah, I think there are times where a person of, let me say, an entity will take a decision, and based on new information, such an entity is likely to change the decision or the stance.
Yes. So we are all of some business background. Those in the financial sector, if there are wrong signals that the investments of customers of a particular bank are being wiped out by maybe changes in the market environment, there's going to be that rush for people to go and withdraw their money. And that can lead to the collapse of banks, not so. So people just spreading rumor out there can lead to the collapse of banks. So it means information can be a mechanism that can influence or produce changes in reality. Just look at us at the individual level. If you are going to give somebody bad news, you have to be very careful how you deliver the bad news, because you know that if you don't deliver it well, you are likely to cause more problems than the one you are going to report. The same thing in terms of causality. If you are going to give somebody good news, you will choose the right moment to do that, to break the news. That is why It is based on these dynamics that we say that information is related to what? It's related to causation as a philosophical concept. So information is related to all these different philosophical concepts, the concept of truth, the concept of logic, and the concept of evidence, and the concept of causation or causality. Okay? So how do we assess whether information is valid or is of quality? How do we assess that? Information system researchers, how do we assess whether information is of quality, or how do we assess the validity of information?
Prof, let me try. Okay, I think maybe when it leads you to, achieving your organizational goals, you can term it as being quality or maybe.
So assuming, would you consider information, before it leads you to organizational goals, you must have assessed the information to have met some criteria before you use it.
Yeah.
What criteria should it meet?
If possible, maybe by testing it during the first stages.
So the first stage is, if you are going to test it, by what criteria will you use to test it? So now let me give you an example. If I tell you something, before you use that information, what will you do to make sure the information you have given me is of value or is reliable?
I also make my personal checks about it.
Okay.
I will search to see if I can get more evidence relating to what you have given to me.
Okay. So that accuracy, that's the word, accuracy.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you will do your checks to make sure the information is what? Is accurate.
Okay.
Completeness, whether the information the person has given you, even before you do your checks, you want to be sure whether the information the person has given you is what? Is complete. Sometimes we will hear some half rumor and we'll start acting. But later we realize that I should have asked some other further questions to make sure, because the information wasn't what? Complete. Sometimes the information may not be relevant. So you have to gauge the relevance of the information.
Prof.
And timeliness, yes, reliability, all that, yes.
I'm also thinking of something. It takes me back to the three different views of information you mentioned. I think there was one you mentioned that said information is largely like a construct of our minds.
Okay.
Yes, I think, or maybe I'm thinking along that way, because with this question you just asked, to a large extent, I think what we would typically do is we assess the person, not the information. For instance, if let's say you tell me something about the university, and a level 100 student also tells me, his or her information may meet all these criteria we are talking about, but her personality, because of his or her personality, I may not take it, and I would rather consider yours to be valid, not necessarily because of the information itself, but because of the personality behind that information.
So that you are basically, you are interested in the agent. Agent that carries the information. You are looking at the credibility of the agent that carries the information. Yes, I think you are right. Yes. So information as a philosophical concept is related to other philosophical concepts, as we have tried to prove. For instance, the issue of truth, evidence, causality, and what else? Is evidence. Okay. Now, there are other aspects that we may have to consider in terms of the just a minute. In terms of the philosophy, information as a philosophical concept. For instance, the issue about ethics, ethical and social issues surrounding the way the information was produced, the way the information is disseminated, and the way the information is used. So that brings in the issue of privacy, security, and even the issue of accountability, and even a divide. So as Hadi was saying, depending on the nature of the one carrying the information, if the dean is giving an information to you as compared to a student giving you the same information, you are likely to believe the dean more because there's some kind of a divide between the agents, maybe in terms of their position. But for us in IS, our access to information may also be hampered by the digital divide. Maybe some have access to some kind of technology to be able to access some information and others don't have. So if I have access and I'm giving you information, it's most likely that you will rely more on my information because of the fact that I am favored in terms of the digital divide because I have access to more data than the one who is less favored in terms of the digital divide. The third aspect that I want us to look at, well, the last aspect I want us to look at is the relationship between information and what? And reality. And we have touched a bit on this aspect. But what I want us to delve much on is for us to see how information shapes and reflects reality. So look at it. How does information shape and reflect reality? So understanding how information shapes and reflects reality means that we are situating this explanation within the context of constructivism. I don't know if you get me. We are situating the explanation within the scope of constructivism by saying that creating and modifying the structure and properties of reality, information can help in creating and modifying the structure and properties of reality. So it means that information can help in changing the physical. Information can also help in changing biological or social systems. Let's see if we can get examples of how a piece of information can help change a physical thing. How can information help in shaping physical thing? How can information help in shaping something physical? How can information help? All of you have done some information system analysis and design before. So when you do system analysis and design, that's a piece of information. If the programmer or whatever, the developer relies on your analysis and design, they may design something physical. Not so. They may design something physical. Information can also shape a biological reality. Not so.
Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah, based on the information you get every day, you may be happy. And if you are happy, your biological system changes. There are some pieces of information you get, you'll be so depressed to the extent that you may even die. So information can shape reality this way. Even our social systems. Sometimes we just go on Facebook and see certain things, and our perception of certain things in our society, it completely changes. This way, we can argue that information is changing our social systems, and sometimes even our social structure. Our norms are now being shaped by social media. A lot of things that we see online, some of us, we come around, we try to practice them in our societies and our homes. And this is how information can shape and affect the reality, even within within ourselves, our organizations, and our families and social systems. Information can also shape and reflect reality by capturing and expressing the features and aspects of reality, such as patterns, regularities, or anomalies. Can anybody give an example how an information can shape reality by capturing and expressing features and aspects of reality? Hello?
I'm thinking the human DNA or animal DNA, for instance, is an example of this.
Okay.
Because with DNA, we can easily tell whether the person involved is a white person, a black person, Caucasian. We can easily tell all this. And this DNA is just information.
Okay. So now let's come back to our domain. Technologically, how can information capture and express features and aspects of reality? So assuming those of you who are developers, assuming you have built a system such that the system will receive feedback from end users, and end users will continuously tell you that this is what the problems they are facing, and they want the system to factor A, B, C in. And then you go to develop patches, you redesign the system to take care of their current demands. It means that it is the information you have received from the users. You see that the information captured, the information expressing their needs and demands will now shape the reality. That is why we have this theory called social shaping of technology. Have you heard of it? It's a theory, social shaping of technology. It is because information can what? Can shape and reflect reality. Now, still under the relationship between information and reality, we want to move a step ahead from looking at how information shapes and reflects reality by looking at how information, by looking at how reality constrains and enables information. So now it is a reality that is constraining or it is enabling information. It can do this by, reality can constrain and enable information by imposing limits and conditions on the production and processing of information. So maybe a law is passed that you cannot use information for A, B, C reasons. It means whatever information you gather, you cannot use that to shape your technological systems. Are you getting it? There are also logical rules that exist within our society, and you cannot use those logical rules to influence what? Changes in technology. Also, there are also biases that we have, that those biases cannot help, or those biases rather limit how technology can be developed. So it means that when we are looking at the relationship between information and reality, we are basically saying that they are co-shaping. Reality shapes information. Information also shapes what? Also shapes reality. Okay? Now, yes.
Wanted to, so in reality, whereby, let's say, we have human beings maybe in a work environment.
What
People,
human beings in a work environment?
yes, whereby everybody has a level
Okay.
of information they can access.
Okay.
So I want to also relate it in the sense that same kind of reality can also restrict information.
Yeah.
And shape it. So maybe in developing maybe systems, for example, the MI is like this. The information is there. Maybe what information you can see or have access to.
Yeah. So there are different, in organizations, there are different access rights.
Yes.
To different rules. Not so. Is that not what you are saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay. And how does that shape reality? Or how does reality shape that? I don't get it.
The reality I'm talking about shaping information.
Okay.
How
Okay.
information is made available.
Okay. Yeah. When we access systems, we all don't have access to the same information. Yeah. And the reality is that in the organization, we are at different levels. So the reality on the ground is the levels we occupy in the organization.
Yes.
So when we go into the system, our access to information is determined by the positions we occupy, which is the reality. Excellent example. Excellent example. To the extent that reality can constrain. Reality constrains and enables information by providing opportunities and resources for the generation and acquisition of information, such as natural phenomena, technological devices, or cultural artifacts. I think still based on the idea of social shaping or the interrelationship between information and reality. Now, one thing I want us to pay attention to, and at the tail end of the lecture, I will revisit. If I forget, please remind me. The concept of artifacts. The concept of artifacts. Artifacts. All of you, and you can take that from me. You will need this for the rest of the PhD journey. You cannot have an IS topic without a technology component. So you cannot. There must always be a technology, what we call an IT artifact. IT artifact. We'll revisit the concept of the IT artifact a bit later. Now, discussing the relationship between information and reality, we need to also understand the concept of the feedback loop. And the feedback loop will help us in understanding the dynamics between information and what? And reality. So that if information is shaping reality, there would always be that kind of feedback between reality and what? To information, and information to what? To reality. Because information affects reality, and reality also affects what? Information in a reciprocal and interactive way. That is why often we say that they are what? Co-dependent on each other, or they act in a cooperative way. To the extent that we go further to say that information and reality, they co-evolve, or they what? They co-create by sharing and exchanging information among different agents, and by integrating and synthesizing information from what? Different sources and domains. Okay? So in all of this, trying to understand the nature of information, the nature and existence of information, information as a philosophical concept, and the relationship between information and reality. Why is this important or relevant in our discussion of the philosophy of information systems? Or even more broadly, why is it important that we study the philosophy of information systems? It is important because our study of the philosophy of information system provides us with a common and coherent framework and a methodology for us to be able to understand and analyze information in what? In different contexts. Then it also offers us a critical and constructive approach to evaluating and improving the quality and validity of what? Of information. And then lastly, the issue of ethics. It addresses the ethical and social challenges and opportunities of information technology and society in the current digital environment. Yes, then some common directions for future research inquiry based on what we have just looked at. The concept of what? The ontology of what? Of information. We can ask questions about how can we measure and quantify the amount and quality of information in different systems and processes? How can we design and implement information systems and technologies that are ethical, responsible, and sustainable? And how can we foster and promote information literacy and education among different groups and communities? These days, the third aspect is what is a very prominent research agenda. People looking at how IT, the uptake of IT among marginalized groups, maybe the girl child, deprived communities, so on and so forth. Okay? Any question? So we are now, I'm just going to go back a bit for us to revisit our first question. The question I posed at the beginning of this lecture, in terms of whether we can have a world where everything we use, everything we see, everything we hear or touch is information. A world where information is not just something you use, but something you are. A world where information and reality are one and the same. Assuming I ask you this question, what would be your view? Is this world possible? I want to find out whether now you would change your stance to agree with me and Borisa. Muda, Hadi, Hassan, you all offer divergent views in terms of whether we can have a world that is possible where everything we see, we hear, or touch is information. What do you think now?
Prof, now I think yes.
Muda.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what will be your justification for your yes answer?
Okay, so first, I think I gave an example with DNA. At least from there alone, the human being in that context is the information. And then in so many other instances also, the people or the humans are the information, or even the real world objects we have become the information. So I would say, yes, such a world is possible.
So let me ask this one, PhD question. This is a PhD question. What is the ontological status of information?
Guys, the question is to the class.
What? Yes, it's posed. I'm posing it to the class. What is the ontological status of information?
Well, I think it's subjective or constructivism.
Okay. So when you say subjective or constructivist, what do you mean?
Well, I mean that maybe everybody and how he or she sees the information,
Okay.
and maybe possible, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I can also say information. Ontology status of information that it is a reflection of reality.
Okay. So Muda is saying the ontological status of reality is what? Of information is that it is a reflection of reality. Okay. So it means that what you are saying, if somebody comes to lie to you, you will consider it to be true. That's what you are saying. If somebody comes to give you information which is not true, you are saying that the information is a reflection of reality. Then it means you would consider whatever you are told as being true because it's reality.
To determine whether it's reality or not, to be based on another set.
No. So if you are not going to now subject it, then it means you are not agreeing that the ontological status of reality is objective. You are not saying that what they tell you is true. So you are actually aligning with Hassan, who says that information is a subjective construct. A subjective construct dependent on our minds, our interpretations, and our understandings. But now, what are the other philosophical concepts that are related to information that you can think of? What are the other philosophical concepts that are related to information? Borisa?
The causative one.
Causation?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. What are other philosophical concepts that are related to information? We mentioned the issue of truth, the issue of evidence, the issue of causation, right? And the issue of logic. So we were saying that truth as a philosophical concept is related to information. So information, somebody can present you information and it can be the truth. Somebody can present you information and it can be logical. somebody can present you information, and that information can be used as a source of evidence to support your beliefs. Or somebody can provide you information and it can cause something, causation. We also indicated that to understand the ontology of information, we categorize our lecture into 3 main parts by looking at the nature and existence of information. Information as what? A philosophical concept. And then information, the relationship between what? Information and reality. Am I confusing you guys?
No, Prof.
Yeah, I think this was pretty straightforward. All right, so we'll end our lecture here. And then
Prof, a question here.
yes.
Prof, it seems the IS philosophy has relationship with the case study approach, like asking people